Good morning, welcome. You got your study notes in front of you? I think Tassie was handing them out for me. We're in Ephesians chapter 5. So kind of give you, if you're online going to watch this, we're going to kind of finish this up here. This is number 8. Next Sunday is Back to Church Sunday with a barbecue afterwards, so we won't be having our community Bible study on Ephesians next Sunday. But the following Sunday, we're going to wrap it up with session number 9, and that will conclude this part of Ephesians for our Bible studies, okay? And so kind of keep that tucked in back in your mind. So this Sunday, we're off next Sunday, then we'll come back the following Sunday and finish up number 9. So here we go. We're in Ephesians chapter 5. Go down to verse 22, if you would. I'm going to read the end of the chapter and then jump over to chapter 6 and highlight a few verses there. And then we'll take off with our video and our discussion questions. Ephesians chapter 5, 22. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might what? Sanctify and cleanse her by the washing of water and the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, of his bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become, catch this, one flesh, which is one. This is a great mystery. So those of you who are married, it's a great mystery. Teasing. Okay? This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So I'm going to pause here real quick to get your thoughts. You're like, what? I'm not married. The point of it is, Jesus is setting up going to be 2 illustrations. The first one is husbands and wives, and the next one is going to be slaves and masters. Those 2 illustrations go back to the one central thought is the church and Christ. So he's saying husbands and wives, slaves and masters, looking at one thing, and that's how what? Christ loved the church and gave himself for the church. So he's showing you how our relationship as a church in Jesus Christ is by giving us 2 earthly examples. Make sense? So let's finish up in verse 33. Nevertheless, each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Children, now we're going to get to a different one here. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you, and you may live long on the earth. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. And now here's his big second illustration that he's showing us. Bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart as to Christ. Verse 6, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from what? Your heart. With good will, doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether it is slave or free. And you masters, verse 9, do the same thing to them, giving up, threatening, knowing that your own master also is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. So with that set in mind, you kind of see how Paul is setting up this illustration of the church and Jesus Christ with the 2 main examples of what? Husbands and wives, slaves and masters, and then tucked away in there is something for the kiddos and dads. And it's kind of the same. It's all about relationships. So with that in mind, question number 1 at the top of Ephesians is, what does the last phrase in 6:9 tell us about God? No favoritism between whom? Keep that in mind as we go to our video with JD. We're going to watch the video, and then we're going to come back, and we'll go through these discussion questions.
At the end of Ephesians 5 and the first part of Ephesians 6, Paul is going to take three very common relationships: marriage, family, workplace relationships, the kind that you would observe here eating together at a diner like this one. And he explains that these relationships are like laboratories that God has created in order to make us more like Himself. And here's the main idea I want us to grab a hold of in this chapter 5 and first part of chapter 6. That is that God uses our most normal day-to-day relationships to really do two things. One is to teach us about Himself and to make us more like Himself, and the other is to put His character on display for a watching world. Let's start with His first example. God uses marriage, Paul says in Ephesians 5:32, to teach us about His love for us. In verse 32, Paul explains that God designed marriage specifically for that purpose. Well, how does marriage teach us about God's love? Well, in at least three ways, Paul seems to indicate here. Number one, marriage gives us a taste of God's beauty. C.S. Lewis said that based on this passage, that we ought to see marriage, so we ought to see the good parts of romantic love like a ray of the sunshine that comes and it warms our face, and we look back up along the ray to the sun from which it emanates. He said the point is not the ray itself, the point is to direct you back up to this sun that is the source of all these things. That's what marriage does, is it gives us a picture of a love that every human being was created for and that we yearn for, a desire to be fully known and fully loved. You see, to be known but not loved is rejection, but to be loved but not known, that's just sentimentality. We want somebody to really know us, to see us, the real us, warts and all, and to love us unconditionally. Well, marriage gives us a shadow of that kind of love, but God's love is the unfailing reality behind it. God's love is the sun that the beams of marriage lead us back to. Secondly, marriage is going to give us a picture of God's image, which is unity and plurality. Paul explains here in chapter 5, drawing all the way back from the creation narratives of Genesis 2, that God gave the man and the woman different roles. He created them differently, different roles to play in.
Let's start, thank you. A little loud, but I'll whisper. That one right there, thank you. Yes, okay. So here we are, the first question, what does the phrase in 6:9, so let me read 6:9. And you masters do the same things to them, giving up the threatening, knowing that your master also in heaven, which is who? God. And there is no partiality with him. So the question is in 6:9, tell us about God. So when he looks down at us, he sees us what? As the same in unity, right? He doesn't see racial divides. He doesn't see ethnic divides. He doesn't see married, not married. He doesn't see financial. He doesn't see anything like that. He sees you as a child of God. You are one of his. And that's how he's trying to treat it through the illustration of marriage, of unity coming together, because in Ephesians, they were having a little bit of a hiccup with this in their church. And he says, God, your master in heaven, does not show any partiality. So in other words, knock it off. Neither should you. Treat everybody the same, okay, as a child of God. So there's no favoritism. The second thought here in your notes goes down to when Paul says to treat your slaves in the same way. What does he mean, and what is the same way? Well, when you go back to this, and you go back to looking at, if you had a little bit more history in the chapter that we're talking about in the Ephesus church, it says, so if you just think of the word slave, a slave is what? He has a master, so the master and the slave, but he's trying to show the relationship with them. So the question is, he said, treat yourselves the same way. The same way as what? The same way in unity. He says, yes, respect them. Respect those in authority over you. Respect them if they're your slaves. So when you look at this, he says, in which your slaves are told to serve their masters wholeheartedly with everything you got. Serve Jesus Christ with everything you've got, just as you would obey Christ. So here's the masters are told that they also serve Christ. So just don't think because you're a master, I can treat my slaves however I want to. No. How does Jesus Christ treat you? He is our master. He doesn't treat you that way. He says, so you masters treat those underneath you the same way that I am treating you. So he's trying to show the illustration here as Christ does. So they need to treat their slaves as if you were serving the Lord in everything that you do. So we go to the thought number 3. Now, if you read over verses 5 and 8 again, which we do, what do you see here? What reward should slaves be most concerned about, and who is the ultimate master? Well, we kind of been alluding to that already, but let me read 5 through 8. Bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart as to Christ, not with eye service or men pleasers, but as what? Bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from where? The heart. With goodwill, doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether he is a slave or he's free. So the question is, what do you see here? What reward should a slave be most concerned about? Yes.
Heavenly reward.
Yeah, heavenly reward, or what? Pleasing, the reward of pleasing your master and doing things from the heart. So when Paul says he's, a bondservant, most of the servants were a slave to their masters. But when you come to the word and then you look at the bondservant, a bondservant was, I have a choice to leave, but I'm not leaving, I'm staying. This is where I'm going to live the rest of my life. I'm bonded to my master. I'm a bondservant. Some of the servants back there, it sounds like current days, yes.
The thought comes to me is our relationship to our bosses
Right.
out here in this life. When you have a job,
Yes.
we do physically we report to these people over us, but ultimately our boss is God, right? So how we do and how we perform on our job is we're doing it for
Yes. So jump down to the next question. She just answered it for us. Is this essentiality the same as boss-employee relationships? Yes. Yes. So a lot of the servants had a mark on their bodies to who they belonged to. Back in the day, too, it just seems like current, a lot of them had a hole punched in their ear that they belonged to somebody. They were marked. And that's a bondservant. So Paul said, I'm a bondservant of what? Jesus Christ. So that relationship with this is also what goes to the next question 4. Is this essential the same as boss? Of course it is. Of course it is. Your relationship. Respect those in authority over you. So if you go to the verse, it says, not with eye service or as what? Men pleasers. You do the same thing whether your boss is around or not. Yes. That's the integrity of the heart. Because sometimes when you think, oh, he or she's not looking, or I can do this, nobody will ever know. Well, you know what happens? The danger is we take that into our spiritual walk and think God won't see. Who are you trying to kid? Because we accidentally and purposely take that relationship to where we treat God the same way as he's not looking or he won't notice. Of course he will. Who lives within you? He's closer to you than you are. He's there with you. So we look at that. So thanks for bringing that up, Tassie. Then let's go to 5, if you would. How could this affect the way you work, either as an employee or a boss? You started it back there, Tassie. Let's finish it. How would that affect the way that you work? Okay, how many of you work? Teasing. Yeah. How does it affect the way that you work?
It
Mm-hmm.
But God is the one that I work through because He's going to give you rewards for doing
Right. Yeah. So just saying, were you, yes, go ahead.
I want to say also that it's also showing others around you while you're working,
Mm-hmm.
loyalty,
Mhm.
what that is.
Mhm.
Letting them see that you're not doing this for any of the benefit.
Right.
To do your job and do it correctly and teach them because they're not going to know unless they see somebody do that.
Right. How many of you where you work, people know that you are a believer? Or how many of you kind of like hide it? I don't want them to find out. So they know. I work with a place where a lot of people know I'm one of the pastors here at Main Place. They know about the transition. I don't hide my faith. They know it. I have an open door policy at work where, hey, fair game, ask me questions. So a lot of them do. But here's the danger. They know that I'm a believer. So what happens if tomorrow I go to work and I start cutting corners? Or I start doing this? You know the first person they're going to call out? Me. They'll do it all the time. It's just fair game for them. But when they see me do it, hey, I thought you were a Christian. Well, and you're right. What you just said there is we represent Him. People are watching your life. They're watching what you do. Do you reflect Jesus Christ in unity? Because they're going to see how you behave. And sometimes Christians get a bad rap because we don't behave like we are the son or child of God. Okay? So even your work really speaks volumes. I have people telling me what I'm going to do before I do it because I'm a Christian. I've had that like last week. Oh, I know what you're going to do because, and they'll start rattling off because of my faith, because I believe this, they know what the end result should be. And they're right, but they're calling me out on it because they know what Christians should live like. Yeah, I don't know if that's happened to you. So what happens if I did not do the end result what they're thinking? Oh boy, they don't want nothing to do with me because now I'm a fraud. So he's showing about this relationship with servants and masters, relationship with boss and employees.
None of my business what you think of me. It's my business what I do for Christ.
Well, yeah, but what I think of him should reflect what you're doing.
Said to a non-believer.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yes.
They don't believe that.
Yeah.
No,
The only way
no.
you teach them that is your action.
Yeah, they're watching us. So good job, guys. Go down a couple more to according to verse 1 through 3. You see that statement? Let me read 1 through 3 again. That's at the chapter 6. It says in these 3 verses, as we're looking at the question, why should children obey their parents? And under the first immediate answer from any parent, I know what it is, because I said so. So let's read it. Children, obey your parents in the Lord for what? This is right. So it's the same thing if you want to say employers to employees, the church and Jesus Christ. You can whatever relationship, but this is now hitting home to kids. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with what? It's a promise. And the promise is that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. So mom and dad just don't take you out. Kids, you want to live long? You want to see tomorrow? You ever said that from your mom and dad? You want to see tomorrow? Yeah, you better shape up and listen. Yeah. So does it mean they're going to live to be 80? It doesn't say the age amount. It says you're going to live. What does the word live? We think in terms of years. It's not in terms of years. It's a lifestyle. It's living with obedience to your parents. So the same way with God in your relationship. Does He promise you tomorrow? No. If you want to live well, what do? You obey Him. It's with promise that you'll see good days. You want to disobey? You're going to see good days? No. You're going to see rough days ahead of you. So he said this is the first commandment. So he's talking about children and parents. And then he goes to 4, which is a great example for all of us. And he goes and he hits home to dads. He said, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. In other words, don't bring them to anger. Don't make things such tense in their lives where they just kind of just lose it. You're the dad. You lead by example. Do you think God exasperates you? Do you think God provokes you? No, He loves you. He cares for you. His arms are open wide for you. He wants to do everything He can for you. But He asks you what? To obey Him and to love Him. So He says, fathers, just as I treat you, don't provoke your children to wrath or to anger. That's not how you do it. So let's go on to the next one. Does obedience always lead to a longer life? I think I just answered that one. Yes or no? Class? Does obedience lead to a longer life? What is the promise really saying? Okay. Things will be well with you. So if you disobey, are things going to be well with you at home? No, you're going to see mom and dad correct that behavior. Same thing with you. When you disobey God, are you going to get away with it? He doesn't want you to get away with it. He wants to correct disobedience as quickly as possible. We're so stubborn that we continue on in it. So he, as a father, he wants to come down and correct it. So what? Things will be well with you. Does that mean you're not going to have struggles? No, that's not what it's talking about. We live in a life, we live in a sinful world, we live around sinful people. We just remembered 9/11 yesterday, the 20-year, and we see stuff that can happen in this world. Not good stuff. So it doesn't mean things are going to be perfect. It means that you will live well in your relationships with him. So let's go on, if you would. Does obedience always live longer? No. What is the promise? What we're really saying? We talked about that. So Ephesians chapter 5, down to verse 31 to 33. It's the end of this. It says this. What is the profound mystery that Paul mentions? So let me read this. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and they shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become what?
One flesh.
There you go. So if you keep that in mind. This is the great what? Mystery. So I know I teased with that earlier, but husbands and wives, and if you're not been married, but the greatest mystery to me is you take two people, the opposite, a man and a wife, two different backgrounds, two different everythings, and you bring them together, and God makes it one. That's incredible, how he does that. So now you look at it, the mystery to me is this: he's taken all of you in our class today, and then the rest of Main Place. Those that were watching that are members that can't be here on Main Place, he's taking all of us from so many different backgrounds and upbringings and all over the messes of my life and your life, and he brings us together as a church, and he's trying to create unity out of that. That's only he can do. That to me is a mystery, how he's doing that. But he said he's going to bring everything under what? Control of Jesus Christ. He will do that in the end. But that's what he's doing. That's why we need each other. That's why he's telling Paul, look at these examples: husbands, wives, fathers and children, slaves and masters, employers, employees. All of this is a mystery, is what? Unity. And what did Jesus Christ say through the Gospels? How will all men know that you are a disciple of Jesus Christ? If you what? If you what? If obey and what? Love one another. The world will know. So where you work, going back to that again, they know by the way you what? Love and treat one another, that you are a follower of his.
Do unto others.
So, yeah, that's the profound mystery that Paul. So let me finish reading this. This is the great mystery, but I speak. I gave you all these examples, but what is he saying? But I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular, what? So love. So he says what? So love your wives as himself, and let the wife see that she what? Respects her husband. So, in other words, and you could replace those with the church. So, Jesus Christ loves the church. Respect Jesus Christ. Respect what he's doing in the church. Respect the unity that he's after. Okay? So, let's go on. And then we'll close with this one. How are those two relationships similar? How is Christ one with the church? Yeah. He goes back to that, doesn't he? That's the great mystery. How is he? He is what? The groom. We are his bride. What is he going to do in the end? He's going to bring what? We call it the rapture, but what he's going to do? The bride of what? You've heard that? The bride of Christ is the church. That's us. Is going to be what? And we go to heaven. And what are we going to do in heaven? The marriage supper of the Lamb. See how it all ties in? He calls it the marriage. The bride finally gets to come to the groom and come together in heaven. And that's the rapture. And we all get to sit down with him at the marriage supper of the Lamb. What a party that is going to be.
Without blemish. Amen.
Isn't that's a mystery too. He's going to take somebody like us.
That's where he got his work cut out.
Yeah. He's working overtime in my life. He's getting paying big bucks working overtime. So I hope that helps you with all these examples of coming together as a church. That's why we meet corporately. That's why we come together, because that's why we love each other. That's why we encourage one another. And I'll say it again, I need you and you need me. We need each other. And why? Because what? We're a family. Brothers and sisters. Don't think church is a building, we go to church. No, we're going to see our family. We're going to see our brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. Okay? I saw a hand somewhere back.
I was just a little comment that I had in my head. I think if you're a child of God, you know, you will never get away with anything that's.
No.
God will chastise you and, you know, put you in your place, you know, just obedience. I just feel
Mm-hmm.
if we are children of God, He's not gonna let you get away with anything just like, you know, the world.
Right.
Because you are His child and He loves you so much.
And that's why he's not going to let you get it, because he loves you too much to let you continue in that direction. He's not mean. He's not after you. People think he's ready to come down. He's not doing that. He loves you too much. Yes.
It's like you talk about the church and we're a family. When we had to watch the service live streaming,
Mm-hmm.
and Danny turned it off.
Yes.
And that's it. It's like, oh my gosh, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
Talking to people.
Right.
Hugging, even
Yeah.
going elbow.
Yeah.
In 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the wonderful service.
Right.
It was the gathering together of the
It's
family that
it's so important. Yeah. You ever try to have Thanksgiving by yourself? It's not fun, is it? It's hard. Yeah. Celebrating your birthday by yourself, it's hard, but many people do. So as we close today, I want to thank you for coming. Just going to kind of behind the scenes, and I know you do. We had 2 new people here today at our church. I hope you got a chance to see both of them. Precious ladies that came, one Teresa and one was Nancy. Nancy just went online, found our church online and decided to come, which is great. Yeah, we got like 17 Nancys already. And then and Teresa was our other lady that we've been praying for. She responded to one of our prayer ads that we have out, and we've been praying for her a couple weeks and for her friends. So she decided to come today to check us out, so she was here as well. So, you know, God is working. We've had, I think, last Sunday we had 5 new people on a holiday weekend come. So God is moving. Sometimes don't get discouraged. People are not back yet. We get that, but God's still bringing new people. They're looking, they're watching us. They're coming to see what we're all about. They're seeing what you are all about. So pray for these visitors coming. So I'm going to close with it. Last night we had a great parent dinner here. We had a pack just like here. We had about 40 people-ish here, maybe more than that. We just shared with the parents, and we're going to highlight it again next Sunday, what God is doing with our children's ministry, it's the teenage ministry, and what he's doing with our young adult ministry. So all 3 of those ministries together, from basically the birth to the young adults with Chases Over, that we're moving forward. Because the struggle with about a year ago is when we were running different ads for parenting stuff, we didn't really, still in the middle of COVID, things were shutting down, people not sure about church coming back. We had really nothing for those age brackets except for come, we'll kind of watch those who come. We just don't know who was coming. And we had nothing really in the middle bracket with the teenagers. Now we do. We got 4 great people helping them out. We're going to highlight that next week. We want you to pray for them, that as God is moving at Main Place, that we have ministries for families, for children. We know it's still kind of up in the air, kind of the gray area, people still not saved, we get that. You come as you are, come where you want to come, but we have things in place for families. So that's exciting. And then the end of October coming up in only about 7 weeks, we're going to have our fall festival outside, the 30th, which is the day before Halloween. We're going to have a fall festival, and as many people can bring barbecue pits. We're going to do s'mores out there, so you can barbecue s'mores for dessert. We're going to have a great time, but we're going to have a chili cook-off, a pie eating contest, and all that. So it's going to be a great fall festival for our community. And then the next big one's coming up is in December, is our Christmas Eve service. So those 2 big things are sitting out there on shore, if you would, waiting to come in. So we're going to bring them in. But with the next event is this coming Sunday, is Back to Church Sunday. I hope you'll be here. Altar Billy's will be here, highlight the ministries, and share what God's doing here at Main Place. So I'm excited. I read a verse last night in Joshua, and I read it this morning. I didn't know if you caught it in my service, though. But he said this in Joshua chapter 3, down to verse 5. And we shared this with our adults last night. This is so amazing. Moses is going this way. His ministry's done. Joshua's coming on the scene. Joshua just needed some encouragement. So God said, keep focused on me, which was the ark. So the ark was out before them, and they're focusing on the ark. He says, when you see the ark, he says, go take it. I mean, that was strong when you see it. So I'm thinking, God has given us Main Place. He's given us these ministries. He's given us community. He says, go get it. Go take it. Go help people. So he goes on to verse 5. He says to the people, he says, sanctify yourselves. He's going, Monday morning, how am I going to sanctify myself? I get my toothbrush out and comb my hair. I mean, yes, you get ready. Prepare yourself. That's what sanctify means, is get ready for what I have for you to do. So get up. I just said that in our service this morning. Wake up, and what is God going to do? Not what am I going to do. So he said, sanctify yourself. Why? Be ready for Main Place. Be ready for what God's going to do, because he goes on to say, tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. We've got to believe that here at this church, that tomorrow God is going to do wonders here at Main Place through our ministries, through you, as we reach our community. So he says, you see the ark, Joshua? Go take it, because tomorrow I got great things in store for my people Israel. So he's saying to Main Place, here's what I got for you. Go take it. I want to use you to help people come close to God and to know Jesus Christ. That is our mission here at this church. So that's my challenge for you today as we move forward this fall. We want to focus our attention on our community, and we've got these ministries lined up that we can take care of people once they start coming here. So we'll highlight that next week. Father, thank you for a great day. We thank you for Ephesians. Thank you for Paul. I know as he's dealing with people, people have issues, people have problems. So he kind of outlined it here for us this morning, how you take care of issues that's going to raise up their ugly head about unity. So he puts it to bed, giving us 4 great illustrations of how to come to unity. And it all boils down to our relationship with Jesus Christ. We thank you that we're your church. We thank you that we're a part of it. God, help us to reflect that in the way our lifestyle is tomorrow, the way that we treat other people, the way we treat each other and our brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.